Welcome back to my YouTube channel. If you're new here, welcome. My name's Leonie. I'm a lifestyle and travel blogger, and I've just started this new series on my channel where I get personal with you, talking about things that are important to me and things I want to raise awareness of. So thank you for stopping by. So this video is going to be on my gallstones and my gallbladder removal. Gallbladder is a small organ that stores bile from the liver that is then released into the body, and it breaks down your fats, and gallstones are the bile that's congealed or hardened that live in the gallbladder. You can either have like little balls, I had about 25, or you can have one massive one. Apparently 80% of people that have gallstones don't actually have any symptoms. They're called silent stones, but I was one of the unlucky 20% that did. So my story starts a few years ago in the January, where I started waking up with really bad pains in the night. I really wasn't sure what they were at first. Obviously I suffer from IBS, so I didn't know if this was just a new flare-up experience I was having, but the attacks were getting worse and they were quite high up, and at one point, the first time I decided I needed to go to hospital was, I thought my chest was being crushed. I felt it was something to do with my lungs because it was quite high up. So I went to the walk-in centre. They said they couldn't really do anything and I needed to go into A&E. So I went into A&E and they did some x-rays, I believe, and just put me on anti-sickness, because as well as the pains, I was getting really bad sickness and fevers as well. So the symptoms you can get are flare-ups or inflammation or infections. So these normally, for me, were the attacks that lasted over 5 hours, the excruciating pain, the vomiting, the fevers, the shakes. So they basically told me that what they thought, and they said I had to go back to my GP and get a referral back into hospital, or an outpatient's referral. I went to my GP and basically got told, you're too young. It can't be that, it can't be stomach ulcers, and it can't be gallbladder because you're too young. And I was like, well, that's great and all, but something's going on. So, you know, something is happening to my body. I knew that this was not down to my IBS at this point. I knew there was something more wrong, really, really wrong. So at this point I was having attacks quite regularly. I was having really, really bad ones where I was going back into hospital, into A&E, because I had to be put on drips, anti-sickness medication, morphine, because the pain was so bad. I remember my worst attack, I honestly thought I was going to die from the pain, and this is no exaggeration. The pain was so horrific that I just didn't think I would survive it. And at this point I had nothing left inside me. I was so ill, I was so worn from the pain and the attacks. I was a shell of a person at this time in my life, and I wasn't getting the answers until one of my missions. They finally did an ultrasound and saw I had gallstones, and at that point they decided to do an endoscopy as well, where they put a camera down just to check it wasn't ulcers. So I finally, after about 5-6 months of being told you can't have this and living with this issue, I finally found out. So to manage gallstones, you have to have a totally fat-free diet, because obviously fat can set your gallstones off and cause you an inflammation. So I cut that out, but at this point it was just so bad that it wouldn't matter if I had water, I would still be having these attacks. So I finally got my surgery in the June, and the surgery was a pretty quick one compared to the other surgeries I've had. I was admitted into hospital. I was it was quite early in the morning. I went through all the checks as you do with your operation, and I had keyhole surgery, which you get 3 little incisions, one quite high up on the right hand side. You get one in between your like rib cage and one for your belly button. The scarring is minimal, there's hardly anything there. The only thing I did, because I went through my belly button, obviously your belly button gets cut open, and I was like, and afterwards it looks a bit funny, and I was like, this is never going to heal back to my belly button, it looks awful, looks like someone's, you know, had to it. Obviously they had, but yeah, that was the worst. I thought, oh, it's not going to heal, it's not going to look like my belly button anymore. But it healed absolutely fine. I can even see a scar in my belly button. That one is the biggest in between my rib cage. Sorry, you can't see it, but that's because I then developed psoriasis after I had my operation. Yep. And the recovery time, I was off work for 2 weeks, but I think about the 5th day I was moving about, not very actively, but I could move about quite well. I was admitted back into hospital a few days after my operation because I was being very, very sick again, and they thought maybe something had happened. I might have had a bile leak or something had gone wrong with the operation, but it turns out that I was just having quite a bad reaction to the pain medication. It was too strong for me, and I hadn't eaten anything in quite a long time, so obviously I was taking all this pain medication on an empty stomach. But the recovery time from keyhole surgery is quite good. I didn't feel a lot of pain after the surgery. Obviously I was sore, quite bloated, but it was a relief. It was a relief to know that bloody thing was out of me. And I actually remember coming round from my surgery and being in recovery, and there was a nurse sitting next to me. And she was sitting there with this little pot, and as I come around she started like showing me this pot, and I was like, what's that? And she was like, oh, it's your gallstones. And I was like, why on earth would I want my gallstones? Get them away from me. I was like, they've caused me hell for the last 6 months. But you know, she just left them on my table, and they came home with me for some reason, and then I tried to chuck them away at home, and my mum still kept them. And I was like, just, they're horrible. These tiny, tiny little balls. And I was like, how could they cause so much pain? I really wish I could put into words how painful it was. So that is my gallbladder story. So if you think you might be suffering from gallstones or gallbladder attacks, I hope this has been insightful for you. Just remember, just because you may be under 40 does not mean that you won't get gallstones. If you're told you're too young, living proof. You know, I'm in 20s, and I know quite a few girls in their 20s that have had this issue. If you're suffering and you're wondering about the surgery, I hope you can take away from this that, you know, it's quite an easy recovery. There's going to be minimal scarring, you shouldn't have any complications, and it's all going to be fine. You're never going to have an attack again. And I hope that this just helps some people, and if you've suffered or suffering from gallstones, I'd love to know your experiences. Comment down below, because I always like to talk to people that have been through it, because they understand that pain and that sickness, whereas people that haven't don't. And I will see you again soon. And don't forget to like and subscribe.